I am Althea Whitfield, 73 years old, and I want to tell you about the Thanksgiving morning that shifted the direction of my entire life. That morning, I woke up because nothing at all. A strange kind of silence. After living 73 years, I've learned that silence carries many meanings, sometimes peace, sometimes loneliness. But that morning, silence carried a different one. It signaled that something was wrong. I've always been an early riser. Even now, my body wakes itself at 5:30 without an alarm, just as it has for decades. On Thanksgiving, I usually wake even earlier, an old woman's version of excitement for family traditions. I already had the plan ready, the turkey that needed marinating, the potatoes I'd peel while watching the parade, and the fragrant pumpkin pie that would make the children's faces light up the moment they smelled it baking. Yet as I lay staring at the ceiling that morning, something felt off. The house was too quiet. I sat up slowly, my knees protesting the way they always do at this age. I reached for my robe, soft, worn with time, faintly scented with lavender from the sachets I store in the drawer. I shuffled to the door, paused to listen. Nothing. No tiny footsteps running down the hallway, no cartoons playing on TV, no smell of fresh coffee, which was odd because Jabari, my son, was always the one who made the first pot. He knew I liked my coffee strong, hot, ready the moment I came downstairs. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Morning light spilled through the window at the far end, soft, golden, light that usually made the house feel warm. But standing there, I didn't feel warmth. The house felt hollow, like a shell. "Jabari," I called. "Nia!" No answer. I walked down the hall, peeking into the room where the grandkids usually slept when they stayed over. The bed was neatly made, clearly unused the night before. The stuffed animals they always brought along were gone too. My heart skipped a beat, not from fear, just confusion. Maybe they stepped out early, I told myself. Maybe Jabari wanted to beat the crowd at the store. Or Nia took the kids to watch the parade preparations downtown. Yes, maybe that's it. I made my way down the stairs, gripping the railing the way I always do. The staircase in this house is steep, and at my age, caution is necessary. All the way down, I kept waiting to hear something, anything. A door opening, a voice calling in to say they'd only been out for a moment, but the house stayed silent. When I reached the kitchen, I paused at the threshold. The counters were spotless, too spotless. On Thanksgiving morning, there should have been mixing bowls, scattered ingredients, evidence of the organized chaos that came with preparing the feast. Today, everything was put away, gleaming. I walked to the coffee maker and touched it, ice cold. Then my eyes drifted out the driveway through the kitchen window. I pressed my palm against the cool glass, looking outside. Both cars were gone. Jabari's truck, the one I helped him pay off 2 years ago. Naya's SUV, the one she insisted was necessary for the kids. 2 empty spaces, only faint oil marks on the concrete where they'd always been parked. And when I turned back, I saw it. A folded note on the counter, held in place by the turkey-shaped magnet I bought at a craft fair years ago. My hand, surprisingly steady, picked it up and opened it. Naya's handwriting. Neat, slightly slanted, always looking relaxed. I read it once, then again, then a third time, as if reading more carefully would somehow change its meaning. Mom, please don't worry. We decided to go to Miami Beach for Thanksgiving this year. You wouldn't enjoy the flight, so we thought it was best to let you rest at home. We'll be back in a week. Love you, Naya. I stood there, holding the note, and the strangest thing happened. I didn't cry. I thought I would, throat tight, eyes stinging, chest heaving before tears spilled, but nothing came. Instead, I felt very, very calm. Before I continue, I want to ask you something. Are you in your PJs, or already elbow deep in stuffing? Leave me a comment below. Are you listening to this while cooking your own Thanksgiving meal or relaxing after a long day? And if this story resonates with you, please hit like and subscribe. I share these stories because I believe we need to hear each other's truths, and your support means the world to me. Now let me continue. I turned away from the window, trying to piece together everything I had just seen. There had to be an explanation. Jabari wouldn't leave without telling his mother. Just yesterday, the two of us were discussing today. He asked what time I wanted to start cooking, whether I needed him to pick up anything from the store. I lifted the note again, reading it once more, this time focusing on each word. We decided. Not we wanted to ask you, not we hope you understand, just we decided. Then the part about the flight. You wouldn't like the flight, as if they knew what I liked, as if my comfort was the reason they left me behind, not something entirely different. I set the note back down on the kitchen counter, smoothing it carefully, then walked to the coffee maker. My hands moved on instinct, scooping grounds, filling water, pressing the button. The machine made its familiar gurgling sound, and I stood there watching the coffee drip, drop by drop, into the pot. The wall clock ticked steadily. 6:15 a.m., Thanksgiving Day. When the coffee finished, I poured a cup, added cream just the way I liked, and carried it to the kitchen table. I sat in my usual chair, the one facing the window where I could see the bird feeder in the backyard. Just then, a cardinal landed, a burst of red against the pale gray morning. It pecked at a few seeds, then fluttered away. I took slow sips, letting the warmth spread into my hands, into my chest. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I let myself think clearly. Not what a mother should see, what a good mother should do, or how to react to keep the peace. Just the truth. And the truth was, I was sitting alone in my house on Thanksgiving morning, drinking coffee I brewed myself, after my son and his family had flown to Miami Beach without saying a word to me. They left a note, no phone call, no invitation, not even the courtesy of telling me directly, just a note. I set my cup down and let my eyes move around the kitchen. The refrigerator I bought when they said the old one was too small. The new curtains I sewed because Nia wanted something more modern. The dining table where I'd shared hundreds of meals, always insisting everyone else get seconds before I served myself. Sitting in that silent house with a note on the counter and an empty driveway outside, I felt something inside me shift. I didn't cry. I began to think. To understand why we ended up here, I have to go back 3 years, to the day Samuel, my husband, died. We were together 48 years. One night, he slipped away in his sleep. People called it a blessing. Perhaps it was. But no matter how peaceful, losing him left a void I didn't know how to fill. Our little home on Lancaster Avenue, the house we bought when Jabari was still a boy, suddenly became too big and too empty all at once. I remember standing in our bedroom a few weeks after the funeral, staring at Samuel's side of the closet, his shirt still hanging neatly, pressed, as if waiting. I couldn't bring myself to touch them. Then Jabari stepped in. He called every day, brought groceries even before I asked. At first I was grateful. It was comforting to know someone cared, that I wasn't completely alone in the world. One evening, he pulled up a chair and sat across from me at the kitchen table, the table Samuel and I had eaten at for thousands of meals. "Mom," he said, his voice gentle, worried, "I've been thinking, you shouldn't be alone right now." "It's not good for your health," I told him I was managing, because I was. Grief is painful, yes, but after so many years, I understood that being alone and being lonely are not the same. But Jabari insisted. Nia and I talked it over. We have an extra room downstairs. The kids would love having Grandma close. Honestly, we need your help too. Nia works full-time and childcare is expensive. The way he framed it made everything sound mutual, like teamwork. "You can stay in your own home," he added, "but wouldn't it be so much nicer to wake up to the sound of the kids, to have family around you?" Put that way, how could I refuse? I thought about the quiet mornings in the empty house, making coffee for one, eating dinner alone with the TV murmuring in the background. The idea of being surrounded by life, laughter, noise, purpose, felt exactly like what I needed. So I agreed. Jabari's face lit up. He hugged me tight, promising, "We're going to take such good care of you." What he didn't say right away, he needed help with the down payment for a bigger house. The rental was too cramped, he explained, but if we combined resources, the family could buy someplace really nice, big enough for everyone. I had money. Samuel had saved carefully, and the life insurance was generous. Jabari told me to consider it an investment in the family's future. I wrote the check without hesitation. Looking back now, I see how things started slipping even then, but at the time, I was just a widow, wanting to feel needed again. The first few months in the new house were everything Jabari promised. I woke to giggles from the room next door. Nia asked for my recipes. Jabari sat with me every night, sharing work stories. I felt useful again. During the day, I watched the kids so Jabari and Nia could work. Packed lunches, supervised homework, read bedtime stories. Kendrick, 10, often dragged me into his room to show me drawings. "Look, Grandma! My teacher said this one is the best in class." Sanaa, 7, tiny and sweet, climbed into my lap every night, hair smelling of shampoo, whispering, "Grandma, tell me what Daddy was like when he was my age." Those moments, they made everything worth it. Nia said the old washing machine broke. I bought a new one. Jabari said winter utilities were too high. I quietly covered the bills. I did it because it felt right, because I wanted to be the kind of mother and grandmother who eased burdens. They called me a blessing. The word repeated, "Mom, you're such a blessing. We're so lucky to have you." I wore that word like a warm coat. Then somewhere along the way, things shifted. It came slowly, so slowly that at first I didn't notice. Requests became expectations. Thank yous faded into assumed obligations. I mentioned wanting to visit my friend Dorothy one weekend, and Nia's eyes widened. "Then who's going to watch the kids?" Another night, I said I was tired and might take the night off from cooking. Jabari frowned slightly. "We're counting on you." "We're counting on you," became a frequent refrain. I began to feel less like family and more like help. But I told myself I was being sensitive. They were busy, stressed, overwhelmed. Of course they relied on me. Family means helping one another. I believed that. Then came the moment that should have woken me up much sooner. 6 months ago, I caught a mild cold and went to bed early. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, and I heard Nia on the phone in the hallway. I know," she said, with the tone people use when complaining. "She means well, but she's so stubborn. Everything has to be her way. Honestly, sometimes it's easier to work around her." There was a pause. Whoever was on the other end must have spoken. "Oh, we can't tell her to leave," Nia continued. "Jabari would never forgive me, and she helps so much. Bills, the kids. We'd be drowning without her money." Her money. Not her. Her money. I lay very still, staring at the ceiling, feeling a cold heaviness settle in my chest. She kept talking. "But between you and me, sometimes I just want my house back. You know, it's nice having help, but I miss our own space." Our own space. As if I were intruding, as if this wasn't the house I'd helped buy. I didn't confront her. I didn't bring it up. I folded it into a quiet drawer in my mind and kept living. Because what else could I do? Where could I go? I convinced myself maybe I misheard. Maybe Nia was just having a bad day. Maybe she didn't mean it the way I interpreted. But from that moment, I started noticing other things. They made plans without asking whether I wanted to join. Nia reorganized the kitchen after I cooked, moving everything back to her arrangement. Jabari talked about his house, his mortgage, even though my name was on half the paperwork and I paid more than half the bills. I was living in their space, cooking in their kitchen, helping raise their children, but I was doing it with my money, my time, my energy. That Thanksgiving morning, as I sat at the kitchen table, Coffee in hand, eyes resting on the note, all those memories arranged themselves into a pattern I could no longer ignore. I wasn't invited because they loved me. I was invited because I was useful, and when I was no longer convenient, when I might become a burden, they left me behind, without a second thought. I sat at the kitchen table until my coffee went stone cold. Outside, the light grew brighter by the minute. By this hour, normal houses would be bustling with turkey prep, laughter spilling from room to room. I wasn't normal anymore. With a faint tremor in my hands, I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I stopped at a name so familiar it felt like home. Dorothy Mae Johnson. Dorothy has been my friend since, 1978. We met at the West Philadelphia Baptist Church, both of us young mothers with little boys racing around the yard. Samuel and her husband Robert became close too. The four of us went through everything together: birthdays, weddings, funerals, joy and sorrow alike. Robert passed last year, just 10 months after Samuel. If anyone would understand, it was Dorothy. The phone buzzed twice. She picked up. "Althea, you're calling so early. Is everything all right?" Just hearing her voice nearly made me cry. "Dorothy, I don't know what to do." "Stay put. I'm coming over." And she did. 20 minutes later, Dorothy stood at my door, a coat thrown over her nightgown, eyes full of worry. "Good Lord, Althea. You look worse than when Samuel passed. What happened?" I handed her the note. Dorothy read it once, then twice. Confusion crossed her face, then disbelief, then a clean, bright anger. "They went to Miami Beach? Without you? On Thanksgiving?" I nodded. My own voice sounded strange to my ears. "And they left just a note?" Dorothy's voice pitched higher, that protective anger people have for someone they love. "Not even a phone call? They don't deserve you, Althea. You've sacrificed too much." Then she did what only a true friend does. She didn't make excuses for them, didn't say, "I'm sure there's a reason." She sat beside me, took my hand, and let me talk. And I talked. Everything I'd kept hidden for 3 years. About the down payment for the house, about the washing machine, the refrigerator, the TV, and so many other things. About how I watched Kendrick and Sana every day while their parents worked. About the bills I covered. About the conversation I overheard Naya having. About feeling less like a mother and more like a funding source. Dorothy listened to every word, her eyes glossy with tears. When I finished, she said softly but firmly, "Althea, you have to leave." "I can't." "Yes, you can. And you need to." Dorothy squeezed my hand. "Listen to me. When Robert died, my son begged me to move in too, said he needed family. But do you know what he really needed?" I shook my head. "My money. He wanted me to cover some bills, help with the mortgage. He didn't need his mother. He needed his mother's bank. Did you say no?" "I did." He was furious at first. 2 months of silence. But now we have a real relationship. He visits because he wants to, not because he needs to. We talk about life and feelings, not about money. Dorothy looked me straight in the eyes. "You deserve that, Althea. To be loved for who you are, not for what you can provide. But the grandkids will be fine. And who knows, when Jabari realizes what he's losing, he may learn to value his mother." We sat in silence for a long while. Then Dorothy asked, "Do you have savings?" "A little." "Samuel left me enough." "Good. Use it. Find a place of your own. You're only 73, Althea. There's still so much life ahead. Don't spend the rest of it as an employee in someone else's home." After Dorothy left, the house fell quiet again. Her words kept ringing in my head. That night, I didn't sleep. Lying in the dark, I stared at the ceiling, my mind spinning like a top. Every time I drifted off, memories surged back. Kendrick asking me to help with math, the way his face lit up when I showed him how. "Grandma, you're amazing. You're the smartest. Sana crawling into my bed after a nightmare, that tiny body trembling. "You'll stay with me?" "Always, baby." Last Christmas, the big TV I bought, Jabari actually cried when he opened the box. "Mom, you're so good to us." "We don't deserve you." Back then, I thought he was being modest. Now I wonder if he was simply telling the truth. Around 3 in the morning, I switched on the lamp, opened the nightstand drawer, and took out our wedding photo. On the steps of Mount Olivet Church, me in a simple white dress, Samuel in a borrowed suit. We were so young, 22 and 24, with no idea what lay ahead. But in that photo, Samuel is looking at me as if I'm the most precious thing on earth. "Samuel," I whispered, "what would you tell me now?" I knew the answer. He would give me that steady, gentle look and say, "Althea, you can't buy love with money. And you shouldn't try." He'd told me that years ago when my mother was sick and I was working myself to the bone to pay for her medicine. One night, I collapsed in tears. Why doesn't she ever say thank you? "I'm doing everything," Samuel held me. "You're doing it because you love her. Love isn't a transaction. Don't give with the expectation of getting something back." "But that's not fair." "You're right, it isn't. What's fairer is to stop giving when it's hurting you. Set boundaries. You deserve kindness." Somewhere along the way, I had misplaced that lesson. Sitting in the dark, I knew Dorothy was right. Samuel would want me to leave too, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Only the grandkids. That was the hardest part. Not Jabari or Nia. The anger I felt toward them was already clear, but Kendrick and Sanaa are just children. They love their grandma, and I love them. At last, the tears came, silent, hot trails down my cheeks. "I'm sorry," I whispered, not sure if I meant it for the children, for Samuel, or for myself. "I'm truly sorry." But apologies didn't change the truth. I couldn't stay. By 5:30, when the first streaks of light slid through the curtains, I'd made my decision. I would leave, and I would take everything I had paid for. That morning, I set the plan in motion. First task, find a place to live. I couldn't just run without a plan. I'm not young enough to sleep on Dorothy's couch or to snatch up the last apartment on a list. I opened the laptop. Jabari had taught me to use it. "Mom, you have to know how to use the internet," and typed, "Senior Living Apartments, Philadelphia." A flood of results appeared. I read reviews, looked at photos. Many places were too expensive. Many felt like nursing homes. Then I found one, the Meadowbrook Complex for seniors in Overbrook. Not far, just a 15-minute bus ride from Lancaster Avenue, where I'd lived with Samuel. Close enough to feel like home, far enough to have space that was mine. The photos looked clean and warm. There was a community room, a small garden, and, detail that clenched my heart, a balcony. Samuel and I used to dream of having a balcony. "One day," he would say, "we'll have a balcony to sit on with our morning coffee." I called immediately. A warm, professional voice. "Meadowbrook Senior Living, Rochelle Green speaking. How can I help you?" "Good morning. I'm looking for an apartment. Do you have any openings?" "We do. We have a studio and a 1-bedroom. Would you like to come see them?" "Yes, but..." I hesitated. "I need to move very soon." "How soon? Would next week be possible?" A small pause. Then Rochelle said, "Let me see what I can do." "Could you come by today?" 2 hours later, I was standing in Meadowbrook's unit, 2B. It was small, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a living room that opened into the kitchen, but the hardwood floors gleamed in the afternoon sun streaming through the window. The kitchen had white cabinets, and the appliances were fairly new. And the balcony. Oh, that balcony. It overlooked a little courtyard with a fountain and benches. Quiet. Peaceful. "I'll take it," I told Rochelle before I could change my mind. "Wonderful. Let's head back to the office and get the paperwork started." By the time I signed the lease, my hands were only slightly shaking. Next step, gather proof. Back home, I opened my desk and pulled out the green folder I'd kept for 3 years. Inside were all the major receipts since I'd moved in. I spread them across the table and began a list. Items to be moved: 65-inch TV, $2,100. Sofa set, $3,000 refrigerator, $2,800 microwave, $400. Specialty coffee maker, $350 blender, $600. Washer and dryer set, $2,200. Lawnmower, $450. Patio furniture set, $800. My bed and wardrobe, all of my personal belongings. For each item, I had the receipt, my name printed clearly. Final task, choose a moving company. I searched online and found a well-reviewed outfit. Prestige Moving Services, family-owned and operated by the Bensons since 1985. The comments praised their professionalism, respect, and reliability. I called. A man picked up after 3 rings. Prestige Moving Services, Tariq Benson speaking. How can I help? Good afternoon. I need to arrange a move for this Saturday, if possible. This Saturday? You mean tomorrow? He sounded surprised, but not put off. We can do that. Let me check the schedule. And I need to start early. Would 8 a.m. work? No problem. Give me the address and I'll assemble the crew. When I hung up, my heart was pounding. I was actually doing this, actually leaving. What I didn't expect. I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd grown so used to fear these past 3 years, fear of being alone, fear of not being loved, fear of not being enough. Now I feared only one thing: staying. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the green folder and my list in front of me and felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Saturday morning, the dawn of a new day. I woke at 5:30 as usual, but it felt entirely different. A current of energy ran through me. Not anxiety, but resolve. I washed up, put on jeans and a sweater for easy movement, then went downstairs. I made myself a hearty breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee. Sitting at the table, I ate slowly, savoring each bite. This was the last breakfast in this house. I wanted to mark it, not with sadness, but as a clean, final period. At 7:45, the rumble of a truck engine rolled into the driveway. Through the window, I saw a large white moving truck, blue lettering along the side. Prestige Moving, we care about your belongings. 3 men climbed down, young, strong, in blue t-shirts and work gloves. I opened the door before they could knock. Good morning, I smiled. You're from Prestige, yes? The tallest one, close-cropped hair and a warm smile, stepped forward. Yes, ma'am. I'm Tariq Benson. This is Elijah Ford and my brother Marcus Benson. We're here to move you wonderful. Come in. I've got coffee and fresh-baked cookies. You'll need the energy today. They exchanged a look, slightly surprised to be welcomed with food at 8 on a Saturday, then followed me in, carefully wiping their feet on the mat. You're very thoughtful, Tariq said, taking a cup. Most folks are pretty tense on moving day. Oh, not me, I said evenly. I've planned this thoroughly. Elijah, the youngest, freckles dusting his nose, took a cookie, bit in, his eyes went wide. This is delicious, ma'am. Thank you. My late husband always said my chocolate chip cookies were the best. I set the plate down and took out my folder. Now let me explain how we'll proceed. I have a list of items to move and the receipts for each one. I want everything to be transparent. Tariq set his cup aside, shifting into professional mode. Receipts? That's right. Everything we're moving today belongs to me. I paid for it all. I just want to be careful so there's no confusion. I handed over the list. He skimmed it, one eyebrow lifting slightly. Quite a bit of furniture and appliances, he observed. I know. I've been very generous these past years, I said with a small smile. But it's time they came with me to my new home. Marcus, quiet until then, glanced around the living room. "So we're taking the TV, the sofa, the table, everything here, ma'am?" "Everything on the list," I confirmed. "Do you want to see the receipts while you load?" Tariq looked at me for a long moment. I could tell he understood this was not a typical move, but I was courteous, had my papers, and was clearly in control. "That won't be necessary, ma'am," he said at last. "Your word is good with us. Our job is to move exactly what you request." "Perfect. Let's start with the living room, shall we?" They got to work. I sat in the one chair I wasn't taking, the folder open on my lap, following along and checking items off. Tariq coordinated the other two with easy precision. They wrapped the TV in moving blankets, secured it with tape. Elijah detached the cables and coiled them neatly. Marcus helped lift the TV onto a dolly, and together they wheeled it to the truck. Next came the sofa. 3 men, 1 rhythm, pivoting corners, counting together, moving like a team that had worked side by side for years. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Each piece passing through the doorway felt like another deep breath after too many held too long. The coffee table, the end tables, the lamps, the bookcase, Nia's decorative books still in place. I'd bought the case. The books could stay. By 9:30, the living room was stripped to the one chair I occupied. The space suddenly felt larger. Bare patches showed where frames had hung, dents marked the floor where furniture had stood. Sunlight cut through the window, dust motes blooming into lacework across the wood. "Kitchen next, ma'am." Tariq wiped his brow, though the morning was cool. "Yes, please." The kitchen is always the heart of a home, especially for me. In that room, I had fed this family in every sense of the word. Elijah opened the refrigerator, eyes widening. "There's a lot in here, ma'am." "I know. Lay it out on the counter. They'll handle the rest." They emptied the fridge, spreading a cluttered mosaic across the counters, leftovers, condiments, ingredients. Then they unplugged it and slid it out, leaving a dark rectangle where it had once fit snug. Marcus removed the microwave, the espresso machine, the blender. Each item followed the others to the truck. By 11, they moved to the bedroom. My furniture, my linens, my clothes. The washer and dryer in the laundry room, even the vacuum I'd bought last spring. The house was turning into the skeleton of itself. I made them stop for lunch, insisted they sit. I'd prepared sandwiches. Their shirts were dark with sweat despite the mild weather. "You're handling this really well," Tariq said between bites. "Most clients are very emotional about leaving." "I'm not most clients," I answered simply. "And I'm not sad to go. Sometimes you have to know when it's time." He nodded slowly, understanding passing between us without many words. By early afternoon, the truck was full. The house echoed. Every footstep sounded like it traveled through my own chest. Only the shell remained. I walked through each room one last time, not to cling, but to witness. 3 years here, yet it had never truly been my home. In the kitchen, I stopped at the counter. Nia's note still sat there, pinned under the little turkey magnet. I left it exactly where it was. Beside it, I placed the stack of bills that arrived in the morning mail, electric, water, internet, all now in Jabari's name, because earlier in the week I'd called each company to transfer the accounts. They would understand soon enough. I did one more thing that made me smile. I removed the 2 house keys from my ring and set them beside the note and the bills. From my wallet, I took a red ribbon I'd bought one past Christmas and tied the keys into a neat bow, the cheerful red bright against the cold metal. A gift, in my own language. Tariq stood in the doorway. "We're all loaded up, ma'am. Ready when you are. Give me a moment?" I looked around the kitchen one last time, the empty rectangle where the fridge had stood, the bare counters, the uncurtained window. Then I picked up my purse, tucked the folder under my arm, and walked to the door. Tariq held it open. I stepped into the cool November air. The sky was clear, bright blue, the kind of day that makes you feel grateful to be alive. I pulled the door closed, hearing the lock catch, decisive, complete. "Where to, ma'am?" Tariq asked softly. I gave him the address of my new apartment, then got into my own car. As I backed out of the drive, I glanced at the rearview mirror exactly once. The house stood there, empty and waiting, like a theater after the curtain has fallen. The moving truck merged in behind me. We left together, toward something new, toward something that was mine. The Meadowbrook Senior Living Complex sat on a quiet street lined with maple trees. Not flashy or grand, just a low brick building, neatly tended flower beds, and a parking lot that always had open spaces. I'd visited twice before signing the lease, walking the hallways, peeking into the community room, listening inwardly to see if this place felt right. It did. Rochelle Green, the building manager, early 50s, silver hair braided neatly, an honest smile, waited for me in the lobby with the keys ready in hand. "Welcome home, Mrs. Whitfield," she said, handing me a small envelope. "You're in 2B, second floor. The elevator is at the end of the hall. If you need anything, my office is right here. Thank you, Rochelle. The movers should be here soon." "Perfect. I'll unlock the service elevator for them." I stepped into the elevator alone, the quiet hum filling the small space. The doors opened to the second floor, clean beige carpet, soft wall lights. The third door on the right, 2B. I slid the key in, turned, pushed the door open. The apartment was smaller than the place I had just left, but it was mine, fully mine. Sunlight poured through the living room window, spilling across honey-colored hardwood floors. A compact kitchen with white cabinets, newer appliances, one bedroom, one bathroom, and a balcony overlooking the courtyard. I moved slowly through the space, opening cabinets, testing faucets, stepping onto the balcony to fill my lungs with the scent of new paint and possibility. 20 minutes later, the truck arrived. I pointed out where everything should go. TV mounted on the living room wall, sofa opposite, end tables on both sides, the bed in the bedroom, the wardrobe against the wall. Everything fit as if each piece had been waiting for this place. Tariq Benson and his crew worked quickly and neatly. By mid-afternoon, the truck was empty, and the apartment was full of my presence. "Anything else you need, ma'am?" Tariq asked, adjusting his work gloves. "No, thank you. You boys did wonderfully," I tipped generously, pressing money into each of their hands despite their polite protests. Kindness deserves to be acknowledged. That's something I've learned all my life. After they left, I stood in the middle of the living room and breathed. The silence wrapped around me, not like the silence on Thanksgiving morning in my old house. This wasn't absence, this was peace. I unpacked without rushing. Samuel's photo went beside the TV, right at eye level from the sofa. In the photo, taken at our 40th anniversary party, he was smiling, eyes sparkling with joy. "Well, Samuel," I said softly, "we're starting over." "What do you think?" Of course he didn't answer, but I believed he'd be proud. I arranged dishes in the cabinets, the good china, the everyday plates, the collection of mugs gathered over the years, each with its own story. The teapot he gave me on our 25th anniversary sat on the counter so I'd see it every morning. White porcelain, blue flowers around the rim. I rarely used it, but I loved looking at it. There was a moment, standing in this brand new kitchen, when I reached into my sweater pocket, then stopped. My hand clenched, not searching for a phone, but reminding myself, don't call, not yet. If you've ever moved out to preserve your dignity, you know, sometimes the bravest act is the choice not to dial. And in the very next part of this story, something knocked on my door that I didn't expect at all. Around 4 o'clock, knock knock. I opened the door to find a woman about my age, short silver hair, bright blue eyes behind delicate frames, holding a covered dish. "Hello," she beamed. "I'm Bernice Lowe, 2D down the hall. Rochelle said you just moved in, and I figured you might like something for dinner. Moving is tiring." A lump rose in my throat from the sheer kindness. "Thank you. Please come in." She looked around and nodded approvingly. "Oh, it already looks like a home. That's a skill, you know." "Thank you. Coffee?" I offered. "I just made some." "I'd love a cup." We sat at the small kitchen table. Miss Bernice told me about the building, the Tuesday night book club, the garden out back if I liked growing herbs, the movie nights in the community room that were always surprisingly full. "Everyone here is lovely," she said. "We look out for each other, just enough, but still respect privacy. A very nice balance." "It sounds perfect." She stayed for about half an hour. As I walked her to the door, I smiled. I'd already made my first friend. That evening, I heated the stew Miss Bernice brought, chicken and rice, simple and well-seasoned. I ate on the sofa, watching the sunset through the glass doors. Amber shifted into pink, then violet, colors bleeding together like watercolor. Faint sounds drifted from neighboring units. TV chatter, soft laughter, ordinary life humming. But in my space, there was quiet. I washed the dish, dried it, put it away. Then I made tea in Samuel's teapot and carried it out onto the balcony. The courtyard below was serene. A few benches around the small fountain. Christmas lights already hung on the trees, though not yet lit. The air was cool, but not cold. Perfect for sitting outside, warming my hands around the cup. From inside, my phone vibrated on the counter, the steady buzz carrying through the cracked balcony door. Once, twice, 3 times. Pause. Then again. I smiled, didn't reach for it, and looked up at the sky. Whatever it was, could wait. For the first time in 3 years, I was exactly where I wanted to be, doing exactly what I wanted. And nothing, absolutely nothing, could interrupt that moment. 5 days passed like turning the pages of a peaceful book. I settled into my new rhythm. Morning coffee on the balcony, afternoon walks around the block, evening tea with the book I'd long meant to finish. Miss Bernice visited twice more. I met a few other neighbors, friendly but not intrusive. Just the balance I needed. The phone kept buzzing. Jabari, Nia, sometimes minutes apart. I didn't answer. I didn't delete. I simply let them be. By Wednesday afternoon, I opened my missed calls list. 18. I scrolled to the messages, reading them with the same calm detachment one reads a newspaper. Nia, Tuesday 3:47 p.m. Mom, we just got home. Where are you? Please call us Nia. 3:57 p.m. Mom, this isn't funny. Something happened to the house. Call me now. Jabari, 4:15 p.m. Mom, please pick up. The house has been robbed. Everything is gone. I need to talk to you, Jabari. 4:47 p.m. Mom, I'm worried. Where are you? I sipped my tea, reading each line without guilt, without panic, just observing. Then more, tones shifting from frustration to fear. By Wednesday morning, Jabari, 8:23 a.m. Mom, the police said they need to talk to you. Please, I don't understand what's happening. I set the phone down and looked out toward the balcony. A cardinal, the same bright red as on Thanksgiving morning, landed on the railing. It tilted its head at me, eyes glinting, then took off. I knew this day would come, and I had prepared for it. But I wasn't rushed. I would let them wait a little longer. They had made me wait. Wait for an explanation, for an apology. Wait to be treated like a human being and not a bank account. And now it was my turn. Fair, as people like to say. The knock came right on Friday afternoon, 3 even firm taps, carrying the smell of authority. I was pressing a cheese sandwich on the skillet when I heard it. I turned off the stove, wiped my hands on a towel, and walked calmly to the door. Through the peephole were 2 officers. One young, late 20s, dark hair, a serious face. The other older, gray at the temples, with the seasoned look of someone who's seen just about everything. I opened the door, smiling politely. Good afternoon, officers. How can I help you? The younger one flipped open a notebook. Good afternoon, ma'am. Are you Mrs. Althea Whitfield? I am. We're here regarding a report filed by your son, Jabari Whitfield. He states the house was burglarized and believes you may know something about it. I see. Please, come in. Would you care for some coffee? I just brewed a pot. They glanced at each other. The older officer gave a small smile. That would be lovely. Thank you. I showed them to the living room, gestured to the sofa, then went to the kitchen. My hands were as steady as ever as I poured 2 cups, set out cream and sugar on a tray with some cookies Miss Bernice had brought over yesterday. When I returned, they were quietly taking in the apartment, the tidy furniture, the TV mounted on the wall, a warmth that was hard to miss. I set the tray on the table and sat in the armchair across from them. Please help yourselves. The younger officer accepted a cup, nodding. Thank you, ma'am. This is good. You're welcome. You said Jabari filed a report? The older officer set his cup down, leaning forward slightly. Yes, he and his wife returned from a trip to find the house cleared out. Furniture, appliances, electronics. They believe you may know what happened. I nodded slowly, as if weighing my words. I see. Then I can help clarify. Would you like to see my receipts? The younger officer blinked. Your receipts, ma'am? Yes, for all the items you just mentioned. I stood, went to the desk, and retrieved the green folder I'd kept safely stored. Returning, I handed it to the older officer. Everything is in here, every purchase, every payment. My name is on each item. He opened the folder, turning page after page. His partner leaned in to look. On their faces, curiosity shifted gradually into understanding. The older officer read aloud slowly. 65-inch TV, purchased December 2023. Althea Whitfield. He looked up. You bought this? I did. A Christmas gift for my son. If needed, I have the card statements. He skimmed on. Sofa set, $3,000. Refrigerator, $2,800. Washer and dryer set. He paused, a flicker of respect in his eyes. Ma'am, this is quite a number of transactions. I know. I thought I was helping my family, or at least I believed I was. In the end, I took a sip of coffee. It turns out I bought too much for people who didn't appreciate it. The younger officer frowned slightly. But all these items were located at the address of the reported burglary. Yes. I lived there for 3 years. I paid for these things, with documentation for every item. When I chose to move out, I took what belonged to me. The older officer closed the folder and rested it neatly on his knee. If you don't mind my asking, why the sudden move? I met his eyes, my voice even and clear. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke up in an empty house. My son, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren had flown to Miami Beach without telling me. They left a note saying I wouldn't like the flight. I stopped, letting the words settle. It woke me up. So I changed. The younger officer's expression softened. They left you behind on Thanksgiving? They left me behind. A brief silence. The older officer lifted his cup, took a long sip, set it down with a quiet breath. Mrs. Whitfield, I don't see a criminal element here. This documentation shows you lawfully purchased those items. You had every right to take your property. I thought so too, but I still wanted to be clear to avoid misunderstanding. The younger officer rose. His partner did the same. We have what we need. Your paperwork is very thorough. He placed a business card on the table. If there's any trouble or harassment over this, call me directly. Thank you, officers. I walked them to the door. As I opened it, louder voices drifted from the elevator area, raised, strained. Jabari and Nia. They must have followed. The elevator doors parted and they hurried out, coming face to face with the officers at once. Nia's face flushed, her voice sharp. Officers? Did she say anything? Did she admit what she did? Jabari came behind, eyes darkening. She stole from us. She cleaned out our house. The older officer raised a calming hand. Mr. Whitfield, Mrs. Whitfield, we've reviewed the matter. And, Naya snapped, your mother has receipts showing she purchased the items that were removed. Legally, she had the right to take her property. Naya's mouth fell open. But those are our things, our furniture, our appliances. In fact, they belong to the person who paid for them. Your mother bought them. They are hers. Jabari shook his head. No way. That's our house. She can't take everything. Sir, ownership is determined by who paid. Your mother has complete documentation. There's no indication of a criminal offense. The younger officer added, I recommend you settle this within the family. Legally, the case is closed. The two officers walked toward the elevator, leaving Jabari and Nia standing stunned in the hallway, staring at me. For a long moment, no one spoke. I stepped back into my apartment. Hope you enjoyed Miami Beach, I said softly. Then I closed the door. Just as the latch clicked, the phone in the kitchen rang, long and insistent, an unknown number. I looked at the screen, my finger hovering. Pick up or let it go? In the next part, that call would pull me back to a memory I never expected. I leaned against the door, hand still on the knob. Outside, their voices buzzed on, Nia's edge like ice, Jabari's low and strained, but the words were only static now. My heart beat hard, not from fear, maybe adrenaline, maybe release. I wasn't sure. I walked slowly to the living room, sat on the sofa, lifted my now cool coffee. My hand trembled just a little. I had done it, truly done it, faced them, stood firm. No apologies, no hedging, no bowing my head. Only the truth, clean and neat. For 73 years, I have played every role: daughter, wife, mother, grandmother. I've spent a lifetime caring for others, putting them first, making sure they were happy, even when I was running on empty. But in this moment, in my own apartment, among my own things, I was simply Althea, and that was enough. The tears came after. No regret, just release. They slid quietly in the late afternoon light, and I let them come. I understood I might lose my son. Jabari may never forgive me. I might not watch Kendrick and Sana grow up. That loss is real, and it hurts. But I had found something more important: myself. The letter arrived 3 weeks later, delivered by certified mail. I signed for it, thanked the mailman, and brought it inside. The envelope looked formal, the upper corners stamped with the county court's address. I set it on the kitchen table, brewed a pot of tea, and only then opened it. Inside was a summons for small claims civil court. Jabari and Naya were suing me for emotional damages, claiming my actions caused them undue stress and financial hardship. The amount they demanded, $12,000. I read it twice, set it down beside the steaming cup. An hour later, Miss Bernice knocked on my door. I had been tending to my potted plants on the new balcony. "You look a little worried today," she said as she stepped inside. "What's going on?" I handed her the letter. She read from beginning to end, eyebrows lifting higher with each line. "They're suing you after everything that happened?" she burst out. "Do you have a lawyer?" "I don't think I need one," I replied. "I have receipts." The truth is simple. You're stronger than I am. I smiled faintly. It's not strength. I'm just tired of being afraid all the time. The court date was set for early December, on a gray Tuesday morning when the sky threatened snow but stubbornly held off. That morning, I rose early as usual. I prepared slowly. I chose my best coat, charcoal with pearl buttons, the one Samuel always said made me look distinguished. A simple dress, comfortable shoes, a small purse, and the green folder tucked neatly inside. In the mirror, I met a woman who was steady, ready, not angry, not anxious, just resolute. Philadelphia County Courthouse. The courthouse sat in the heart of the city, a tall brick building with high windows and cold stone steps leading to heavy wooden doors. I arrived 15 minutes early, checked in with the clerk, and made my way to the courtroom. The hallway bustled. Lawyers in dark suits adjusted files. People waiting for hearings whispered together. The air carried the scent of old wood and floor polish. I chose a seat near the door, placed my purse on my lap, sat upright. 10 minutes later, Jabari and Nia arrived. Nia wore a navy suit, hair sleek, makeup precise. She clearly wanted to project credibility, wanted to look wronged and professional. Jabari wore slacks, a buttoned shirt, a tie slightly askew. His face flushed. Whether from cold or anger, I couldn't tell. They recognized me instantly. Nia's jaw tightened. Jabari looked the other way, as though the opposite end of the hallway suddenly offered something fascinating. They sat across from me. No eye contact. Not with me. Not with each other. The tension felt sharp enough to slice through, but I remained calm. My hands rested still on the purse. When the case was called, we entered the courtroom, sharing the same space, but no longer the same family. The room was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. The judge's bench rose at the front, behind it the county seal. The gallery rows were mostly empty. The judge entered. We rose. She was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and reading glasses perched low. She took her seat and skimmed the file. Case number 4782, Whitfield versus Whitfield. Proceed. Jabari and Nia took the left table. I stood at the right. Mr. and Mrs. Whitfield, the judge said to them, you're the plaintiffs. Please present your case. Nia spoke first, her voice calm but taut. Your Honor, my mother-in-law removed property from our home without notice. Although she says she bought these items, they were part of our household. We relied on them for daily living. Her actions caused severe emotional distress and financial hardship. We've had to replace essential items. It has been devastating. The judge nodded, jotting notes. And the amount you're requesting? $12,000, Your Honor. I understand. She turned to me. Mrs. Whitfield, your response? I rose, voice steady. Your Honor, I do not deny that I took these items. But I assert that I had the legal right to do so. I purchased them myself with my own money. I have documentation for each item I handed over the green folder. The bailiff passed it to the judge. She opened it, turned page after page. The room grew quiet, only the soft rustle of paper. On her face, neutrality shifted into reasoning, then into understanding. After several minutes, she looked up. Mrs. Whitfield, these records are extremely thorough. Thank you, Your Honor. I keep clear records. She turned to Jabari and Nia. I see receipts showing your mother purchased the TV, the furniture, the appliances. Her name is on every item. A pause. Do either of you have documentation that you paid for these items? Jabari shifted uncomfortably. We lived with them. They were in our home. But did you pay for them? A long silence. Nia cut in, voice raised. She lived with us. She contributed to the household. Those purchases were for the family. That may be how you feel. But legally, the purchaser is the owner. Mrs. Whitfield has clear proof. She closed the folder. As for emotional damages, the law requires substantial evidence. Being upset because someone removed their own property does not meet that standard. But Your Honor, Jabari began. Judge Holloway lifted a hand, firm. Mr. Whitfield, the law is very clear. She struck the gavel, sharp, final. Case dismissed. She looked directly at them. I advise you to be more cautious about filing claims without supporting evidence. I exhaled, only then realizing I'd been holding my breath. Thank you, Your Honor, I said softly. She nodded, her expression softening slightly. I retrieved my folder, slipped it into my purse, and stood to leave. As I walked past them, I heard Nia mutter, too low to catch the whole sentence, but selfish, sliced through like glass. I didn't stop. Jabari stood frozen, eyes fixed on the floor. We didn't meet eyes. I knew he couldn't. Just as I stepped into the hallway, my phone vibrated hard inside my purse. A new message. I paused on the stair landing, hand trembling slightly. It could be Jabari. It could be someone else. But whatever it said, it would lead to another door in this story, one I had not expected. I pushed the courtroom door fully open and stepped into the hallway again. The building seemed warmer now, or maybe I was simply lighter. I walked slowly toward the main exit, past the waiting benches, past the lives awaiting their own verdicts. Outside, the cold air stung my cheeks. The sky had darkened. The first snowflakes of the season drifted down gently, like thin threads falling from above. I stood at the top of the steps, inhaled deeply, watched snow dust the gray pavement. I should have felt lonely, standing there by myself, distanced from my son, cut off from my grandchildren, stepping away from the only family I had. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. 4 months passed. Winter slowly settled over the city and then gave way to early spring. The tree in front of Meadowbrook moved from tender buds to a full canopy. Life's rhythm was light and steady, and I moved with it. I had my own schedule. Tuesday, book club with Miss Bernice and 5 ladies who adore mysteries. Wednesday, volunteering at the community center, teaching older adults to use computers and phones. At 73, I'm sometimes the young one in the class. Thursday, the art room on the first floor. Surprisingly, watercolor suits me. Apartment 2B brimmed with small joys, new throw pillows, paintings I made myself, fresh Sunday flowers. The silence that once frightened me had turned into peace. I still talk to Samuel through the photo from our 40th anniversary. Sometimes I even laugh at myself, and that is enough. My phone was mostly quiet. Jabari didn't call. Nia didn't text. I suppose the grandchildren heard another version of the story in which I am the villain. I still missed Kendrick and Sanaa. Sometimes the ache struck in the late hours, but it no longer broke me. I learned something important. You cannot make others value you. You can only choose to value yourself. Thanksgiving morning. This year, I woke at 5:30 to the smell of programmed coffee. No expectations, no fanfare, just an open heart. I invited Miss Bernice, Bernard Washington, and Louise Turner. I handled a small turkey and potatoes. Bernard brought warm bread. Louise brought cranberry sauce. Miss Bernice had pumpkin pie. I set the table with my mother's china, 4 plates, 4 napkins, 4 glasses. Then, on a whim, I placed a 5th plate at the head of the table. Not exactly for Jabari, more for Hope. Hope deserves a seat too. Miss Bernice arrived early with her wonderfully fragrant pie. Bernard and Louise came in laughing about an elevator story. The 4 of us cooked and chatted. Bernard mashed potatoes, Miss Bernice poured drinks, Louise set out the dishes. By noon, we joined hands, and Louise offered a short blessing. Grateful for food, for friends, for another year of life. Grateful for new beginnings and the courage to step forward. The meal wasn't fancy, but it was true. No one assumed I should be the first to jump up. No one demanded anything. There was only sharing and respect. That is what family should be. After dinner, we moved to the living room and played a few rounds of rummy while the late afternoon light fell softly across the room. Around 4, everyone said their goodbyes, promising to see each other at Christmas. I tidied up slowly. The apartment felt warm and full, the traces of a decent meal. Just as I set that 5th plate into the sink, the phone on the table buzzed. An unknown number. I paused. Pick up or let it be? The screen lit and then went dark. I turned away, telling myself, if it belongs to you, it will return. I brewed tea and stepped onto the balcony. The air was cool. The courtyard's Christmas lights were already on. The fountain whispered. I remembered last Thanksgiving. The empty house, the note, the scratch deep in my bones. Then I remembered what came after. The quiet decision, the tidy plan, the moment I took my life back. Am I sad to have lost my son? Yes. The mother-child thread doesn't disappear just because of silence, but I am not sad about how it ended, because here in this small apartment, with belongings I bought, choices I make, and peace I keep, I found myself again. The woman Samuel loved, who knows what she wants and is not afraid to stand in the truth. Inside, the phone stayed quiet. No calls, no favors, no demands, only quiet. And in that quiet, I heard myself, "You are enough. You deserve peace. Walking away from those who don't value you isn't cruelty. It's necessary." Dusk turned purple. I went back inside and looked at the fifth plate, still empty. I meant to put it away, then paused. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, and it certainly isn't inviting pain back in. It is setting down the burden so you can move forward lightly. I washed the plate, put it with the others, turned off the lights, locked the door, and went to bed. Before lying down, I looked at Samuel's photo. "We did well today, honey. You'd like Bernard Samuel's eternal smile answered, May." I was tending the tomato bed in the community garden when my phone vibrated, an unknown number. I hesitated for a beat, then answered. "Grandma?" A small voice, trembling, tentative. "Sanaa." My heart squeezed. "Sweetheart, is that you?" "Yes, ma'am." "I miss you." My eyes burned. "I miss you very much, too." "Dad says you left. I don't understand why I sat on the wooden bench." "Grown-up things are complicated, sweetheart. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because sometimes adults have to choose to take care of themselves. Can I come visit you?" A door inside me cracked open. "I would love that, but you must ask your dad and mom, okay?" "Yes." We talked a few more minutes about school, friends, her newest drawing. After we hung up, I sat still, holding the phone. Maybe one day there will be a bridge rebuilt. Maybe not, but that single moment, "I miss you," was enough to remind me this. True love doesn't vanish. It waits until both sides are ready to meet halfway. They abandoned me on Thanksgiving morning, thinking I would be small, silent, and grateful for scraps. But I learned what they didn't expect. Silence isn't weakness. Often silence is how we find our strength and reclaim our lives. I fell asleep wrapped in the peace I chose for myself. Every bill carries my name. Every item I use is something I bought. Every morning is a gift, no longer an obligation. This is my life, and it is beautiful. Thank you for listening to this story. If you've ever felt dismissed or made invisible, share in the comments. I want to hear you. Hit like and subscribe so stories about self-respect and healing find the right people. See you next time, and remember, you deserve to be loved for who you are.